let's move to the competency of market interpretation. Here, after we've sensed the market, we have to reveal the meaning and the relationships among and between the consumers in the market, the organizations, and the products in the market in order to do the next major step, and that's brand value creation. So let's talk a little bit more about this concept of market interpretation, and we're going to break that down into several sub-competencies: segmentation, targeting, positioning, and marketing strategy. We will cover the top 3 in this lesson. Just to kind of review where we were before, previously we were talking about the concept of market sensing, which involves environmental analysis and research and consumer behavior. As I mentioned earlier, we're going to be moving now into the concept of market interpretation with these sub-competencies. So let's get started. The first thing to point out is that there are 2 major types of markets. We can classify markets as either consumer markets, and in consumer markets, that is when people purchase for their own personal use or consumption, or a member of their family, or it might be a gift to another individual. Another major market type is that of an organizational or a business market. In this situation, a business or an organization buys the product to use in their daily operations. For example, manufacturers, resellers, the government, and many not-for-profit organizations buy products as well. Interestingly enough, the same product, for example, a computer, can be used by both a consumer and an organization or a business. So what decides if a product is a consumer product or an organizational product? Well, it depends upon the intended use of the person buying it. If the intended use is for personal or household use or consumption, that would be a consumer product, which is purchased by a consumer market. If the intended use is to resell it, to use it to produce something else that you will sell, then it would be an organizational or a business market that's making that particular purchase. So why is it so important to differentiate between a consumer market and an organizational or a business market? Well, you'll learn later that how these products are marketed are very different depending upon the target audience that they're trying to reach. So let's move on now and just focus primarily on consumer markets. Obviously, there are a lot of people, a lot of potential consumers out there. So one of the first things that a marketer might do would be to look at the mass market for a product category. And they might say that, you know what, we could meet the needs of that mass market better if we provided something that some people in that market want. Obviously, other people in the market might not want that characteristic so much. So instead of trying to be everything to everybody, which doesn't work so well in marketing because you don't seem very special or different to anyone, instead of doing that, what marketers often do is a process called market segmentation. And that means that we just look at the mass market and we divide it into groups with similar needs or wants, or groups that will react similarly to marketing actions. So the question is, how do you go about dividing that mass market? And we have and are going to present and discuss several common segmentation variables. One common segmentation variable is demographics. For example, do men and women buy different types of products? Do people of different age groups or races buy different types of products? So one way to segment a market is demographically. Another way, a common way to segment a market is geographically. Might it be that people that live in cities purchase products of a particular product category differently than people that live in the suburbs or in rural areas? Another common segmentation tool or variable is psychographic, and basically here we're looking at what their lifestyle is like. For example, people that ride Harleys come from a variety of demographic and geographic areas, but the one thing they have in common is their love for motorcycle riding. It's a lifestyle characteristic. Additionally, we might segment a mass market behaviorally. We might look at the situation in which they're buying for, or the benefits they're buying for when they buy it. So while some people might buy cigarettes to energize themselves, other people might buy cigarettes to relax or to keep from eating. Another behavioral segmentation tool is usage rate. Are we targeting heavy, medium, or light users when we look at a particular product category? So to review, market segmentation is a process of dividing this mass market into groups with similar needs or wants. And we can divide those people demographically, geographically, psychographically, or behaviorally, or using a combination of those segmentation variables. Let's look at an example. One example might be to look at the deodorant market. And we might recognize that males and females have different needs in terms of deodorants. And we might look at segmenting the market based upon their gender, males versus females. And even further, we might choose to segment the market based upon their age. I think you can probably think of a number of products that are targeted to different segments. For example, Axe deodorant is probably targeted to males under 30, whereas perhaps Old Spice might be targeted to males 51 and older. It's interesting, lately I've seen a number of Old Spice ads who typically Old Spice is used by an older demographic, and they recognize this and they're trying to branch out in their market, and so some of their new ads are beginning to target younger males to come up with a new younger base of consumers that are loyal to their brands. Additionally, if we looked at the female market, you can see something like Teen Spirit is something that is used by young females. Perhaps something like Secret deodorant might be used by females 21 to 49, etc. Now, we're not saying that if you are targeting a particular segment, that the only people that can buy that product are people within that age group. We're just saying that the most likely consumers of Teen Spirit are females under 20. Obviously, if you're a female that's over 20 and you want to buy Teen Spirit, we're not going to say, oh no, you can't buy that. But at the same time, I think you'll notice when you see most of those ads, and even by the name, that they're targeting a particular demographic. Let's look at segmentation from another perspective. Let's look at behavioral segmentation. In other words, why are they buying the product? What benefit are they seeking? So if we were to look at gum, one way that we could segment the gum market would be to do it by demographics, age, or race, or gender, or whatever. But in this case, we're going to use behavioral segmentation and look at the reasons different people buy gum. Some might want to blow bubbles, while others might want to keep from eating. Others might want to keep from smoking or to get fresh breath. And there might even be very small segments that might chew gum to do something like relieve heartburn. In fact, there are a number of brands that are targeted to each of these particular categories. Nicorette, for example, Bubblicious, for example, Ice Gum, for example. I don't think at the current time that there is a gum targeted to people who chew gum to relieve heartburn. So that might represent an opportunity for marketers, particularly if gum is related to their mission. So the question is, once you've segmented your market and understand that the mass market is divided into these different market segments, keep in mind segmentation is the process of going through this dividing, whereas the outcome of the dividing identify these market segments. The next question you might want to ask yourself is, which segment would you target? And there are a variety of things to consider here. If you were going to target the gum market, I mean, obviously it looks here as though the size of the fresh breath market might make it the most attractive market to target. However, there might be many competitors in that particular market. So while this is the largest market, if you have 10 competitors in this particular market, your share of that segment might actually be smaller than if you targeted a very small segment for which you were the only competitor, like the heartburn relief market. So one thing to consider in deciding which market to target is the size of the market and the number of competitors in that particular segment. Additionally, you would want to look at the potential growth of that market. It might be that we expect the stop smoking market to grow faster than any market, since that's recognized since smoking is recognized as something that is not healthy for you, it's not socially and culturally acceptable, it's very expensive. We went through a variety of reasons why the traditional smoking market is declining. So 3 environmental factors to consider are the size of the market, the number of competitors, and the potential growth of that particular market. Other things you might consider are whether or not it's a good match for your organization. For example, a company like Crest might choose to develop a gum to target fresh breath because Crest, the toothpaste, is already it's a good match for that market. Whereas it might not be a good match for a bubble type of gum, because bubble gum is usually considered very sugary, and that wouldn't be a good match for Crest toothpaste. Another thing to consider is how different are some of these different segments. Is the market for fresh breath all that different than the market for example, cleaning your teeth? It might be that the markets are not that different, that they don't want that much of a different product. So to develop different products for different segments wouldn't be cost effective, and so we might just go ahead and combine a couple segments even though they're slightly different. We might also look at how much similarity there is within a segment. If there don't have enough similarity, it might not make sense to segment them off from the rest of the others. Another thing to consider is, if you target a new market, might that cannibalize an existing product line or item? For example, if a gum manufacturer recognizes this heartburn market and says maybe we could develop a brand for that, is it possible that as of now the people that are chewing gum for that particular reason are simply chewing the brands that are already in existence that are for freshening breath. If selling to an additional new segment might cannibalize or take away from your existing product line. So we have to consider a balance between better meeting consumer needs, and we want to do that. I mean, usually increased segmentation allows you to develop a marketing mix that better meets the needs of that target market. But in doing so, creating a new marketing mix also usually takes additional organizational resources. And so we have to consider whether the benefits of increased segmentation outweigh the costs of increased segmentation. So eventually, when you look at the market segments, you might pick one or more to target. And that's what we talked about at the very beginning, is that of our uh, of our study is that a target market is a market segment for which your organization develops a marketing mix, a product, a price, a distribution strategy, and a promotion strategy to uniquely meet their needs. Now keep in mind that doesn't always mean you have to come up with a totally new product and totally new price, totally new promotion, and totally new distribution. In some cases, you might use the exact same product but change your promotional strategy. In other cases, yes, you would come up with a whole new product to meet their needs. We mentioned earlier that there are some different targeting strategies. One is what we would call an undifferentiated strategy, and that's when you see the mass market as being homogeneous. In other words, everybody has similar needs, so you don't need to segment, and therefore you only have one marketing mix. Another targeting strategy is when the mass market is heterogeneous and they have different needs. What you can do is to come up with more than one marketing mix targeted towards two different target markets or market segments. Thirdly, even though the markets might be heterogeneous, in other words, they have different needs, you might choose to concentrate on only one segment and have only one target market and therefore only one marketing mix. Eventually, when you decide on your target market, you will want to be able to profile or describe your target market and other market segments in detail. So even though you might segment them demographically, you should be able to describe your target market in all ways: demographically, geographically, psychographically, and behaviorally. So, for example, for this backpack, for example, that is targeting university students, geographically, they identify that most of them will live on campus or within walking distance. When it talks about behaviorally, they're looking for a backpack that is eco-friendly and has large capacity and need plenty of room. When we talk about them demographically, we know that the majority of them are 18 to 24 years old, and we even understand their ethnic background. Again, behaviorally, we understand that how much they want to pay, an average price of $32. Psychographically, we understand that they're constantly on the go, leading very active lifestyles. So this is what we mean by describing or profiling the different market segments and your target market. You need to be able to know your target market so well, even though it might not be like you. I'm reminded of the movie What Women Want, where a man who was an advertising person went into the bathroom and waxed his legs and did a variety of things to try to understand what women go through when they buy products for shaving their legs, for example.